Hello and welcome to TraegerMethod Oil Painting, episode 16. I'm coming to you live from newly designated anarchist jurisdiction of Portland, Oregon. Sandwiched today between the wildfire smoke that just dissipated and the upcoming fascist assault on Portland this Saturday. Have not been painting artistically at all recently. It's been the longest break from oil painting I've taken in a very long time. It's been, I don't know, a couple weeks. I was in no mood to paint during the week that the city was choked with wildfire smoke. It just takes, it's a very intense experience for people who haven't lived it. This dense, thick fog of smoke throughout the city. There's really nothing you can do but stay inside if you can and just wait it out. Certainly not inspired to paint. I like to have ventilation for one thing. I use oil paints, so there's solvents involved. Gamsol I use. So you want to have ventilation. You can't do that during the wildfires, so. I've just honestly been in no mood to paint recently, which is very rare for me. Something about apocalypse, being immersed in this reality that just takes it out of you. The creative spark. Prior to the wildfires, I was painting houses. I've been up on ladders, painting houses for money, and it wasn't until recently when I started doing windows with, what are they called? Windows that have like little window panes. Should think of what those are. I should know what they're called. French windows, I want to call them, but I have no idea if that's true. If that's actually what they're called, French windows. It's like French doors, that have like those, little 8x10 kind of glass panes put together, arranged in a grid with wood in between them. Do you know what you get what I'm saying. Yeah. I've been painting that kind of thing. This house has those types of windows all around, and I really enjoyed that work because it's at ground level. All I've needed is a step ladder that doesn't have thin rungs. It has sort of little platforms like one you'd use around the house or something. It's the only kind of elevation I've needed. So I've been really enjoying just turning off the mind. I've been listening to podcasts intensely, just almost going into an out-of-body experience, just doing that kind of work. Just, hours fly by. All it is just drawing lines, getting into a rhythm. You see your progress. I'm not on a crew that has a high pressure, work as quickly as possible. It's not like that. It's kind of work that, like, I could do this. I mean, easily. I mean, I could do that. Yeah, that exact kind of task. I mean, if I could find a job doing that, it would be. And it's good for me. It's that satisfaction of going like, well, I'm just making some money. Don't have to think. Outdoors, once the the smoke cleared, this painting we're looking at in this video is a small, obviously judging by, compare it to my hand, a small work on paper. That's a tape border. It's taped to a panel, gessoed paper. It's another one of these swoosh paintings, these phallic dip down catalog style paintings that I've done so many of. Just doing some glazing here, glazing being thin layers of oil paint. I use a Daniel Smith oil painting medium for oils and alkyds from Seattle art suppliers Daniel Smith. Look how big that brush looks. Yeah, I'm just, like most people, like many people, if you're aware of anything, I'm struggling a lot these days with having any hope. It's just weird because I honestly have no hope whatsoever. I'm probably like the most, in terms of like a future for human beings and life on Earth, and I mean, I am so. I'll probably talk about this in every episode of this show, which is watched by probably handful of people, a dozen people or so. So I don't worry about repeating myself. I mean, who gives a shit, right? This is a thoroughly, this is a tiny audience that watch, and I can't imagine anyone watches these videos all the way through. So I mean, I wouldn't see the appeal in watching this or listening to it, so I don't know why you would. But on the off chance that there is someone listening now, I mean, if you're hearing this, you're that person, so thank you. Yeah, now right at this point I reached the 10-minute mark, and all I want to do is stop and start recording again. Start over, because I'm like, what have I talked about? Oh, painting houses and feeling bent out of shape about reality and being super negative and having no hope for humanity. So that's what I've covered so far. That I am unrelentingly negative and uninspired. So now where do you go from there? Well, let me talk about, I've talked about him in the past, I believe, the author Roy Scranton. I recently ordered 2 of his books because Learning to Die in the Anthropocene, and I ordered a second book, which the title of which is escaping me now. Because I've been thinking lately, like, I'd like to read again, like read a book, and not, just scroll through Instagram or the 7 news channels I look at, or whatever. I mean, that's the 3 or 4. YouTube, just look around YouTube for things. I'm tired of taking in information that way, and I would like to go a little more in depth and also just have the experience of reading again, not on an electronic device. So I ordered a couple books because, and I went with these 2 Roy Scranton books because I like his take on things. I feel a kinship with him because he's, probably my favorite 3 people right now, thinkers that I find most cathartic, are Chris Hedges, author of many books, former New York Times foreign correspondent. Chris Hedges, Timothy Snyder, author of On Tyranny rather, who I've talked about before, and Roy Scranton. And these are, I realize these are my 3 favorite authors, and I've never read their books. I've never read anything by them other than articles or opinion pieces they've written. I've watched many interviews with all of them, and I highly recommend them to anyone listening. One of the things I like so much about Chris Hedges, of all 3 of these guys, is that they don't sugarcoat or pull any punches, or none of them are about, like, they're just very clear-eyed, and they make me feel less crazy because, this hopeless perspective I have is, I feel like it's accurate. Like, okay, right now I want to stop this so bad and start over, but I'm not going to. Because again, no one listening to this, this is not a commercial product that's trying to appeal to, I just have to remind myself, like, I'm not trying to get clicks or likes. This is just not about that. I do not care. This is unvarnished, the way I think. And I guess part of the reason I want to start over so badly right now is because, I'm seeing, like, oh, we're at the 15-minute mark. This is, we're almost halfway done with this video, and I've barely even begun expressing anything valuable. That's the critique I'm giving myself right now. But again, who cares? Who gives a shit? I guess what I was getting at before, I mean, obviously people, tend to believe that what they think is true is in fact true. Otherwise you wouldn't consider it true. It's a dumb thing to say, like, I think I'm right about things. But, we are living in a time, and let's just focus on Roy Scranton and not talk about Chris Hedges so much, or Timothy Snyder. What I understand Roy Scranton was talking about in this book, again, I haven't read it. I'm looking forward to reading it, Learning to Die in the Anthropocene. What I've gleaned from interviews with him about this book and about his ideas is that he says, he comes from the place where he's like, the culture we live in is dying, period. One way or the other. Either it dies and humanity survives because it has died, or it dies because humanity dies, the human beings die. Those are the two ways it can go. If the culture, and by culture, I don't, I'm talking about late stage capitalist, fossil fuel, suicide, race to the end of, race to ecological collapse, capitalism that we're living in now. It's entering its death throes. If this doesn't end, isn't brought to an end, then life on Earth, for us at least, I'm not talking about all life, but for mammals and certainly the human race, will be over. So he wrote this book, the title of which, Learning to Die in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene being the geological age we live in, the age where human beings are creating, this, sixth, maybe 12th, however you want to measure these things, but, mass extinction event. We're in the process of doing that, and it's a human instigated, or human beings are doing this. So it's the Anthropocene. So his idea is like, part of what we're doing, one of the things that needs to be faced is that we need to learn what this death process is like. Or learn, no, like, and again, I would recommend, instead of listening to me talk about it, I would say go listen to a Roy Scranton interview or an appearance of his on a podcast, or read his book. That's, I guess, really what I'm doing, is just trying to promote his stuff, and without, and I'm kind of just processing it for myself by talking about it. But yeah, he's saying, like, this is what's happening. It's as though, you've been given personally a fatal, a terminal cancer diagnosis. How do you learn to live with that? There's no amount of positive thinking or wishing or whatever that's going to change it. You got to learn how to die, and that's what he's kind of getting at in this book. Is like, let's stop sugarcoating this. Let's stop, believing in technological magic that's going to change everything or whatever. Let's get into facing our place, our position, and learn how to do it. And I've been thinking a lot about I do not have children, and I've noticed recently that I've been having a lot of just kind of anger at people with small children. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but this feeling of like, what the fuck are you thinking? having a child in 2020. Like, are you an idiot? Are you just, and I had this thought, like, people on the left criticize people on the right for being climate change skeptics or deniers. It often strikes me, that these same people have children, and I think, well, everybody's a climate change denier. They all are, because you wouldn't have kids if you believed in the reality of climate change. I mean, unless you're just a completely selfish prick, Everybody's full of shit. But then I think, well, this has to be just a shitty way of thinking. It just, at its root, it feels like a real, just a shitty way of thinking. This negative thing, and like being mad at people for having babies now, like, and it makes me feel like I'm just trying to justify some personal failures on my own, or just my own cowardice or whatever. Try and make myself feel better about my own place in life as a childless, whatever dude, Like, oh, I'm so good because I didn't have children. I jokingly say that to people sometimes. Like, my greatest accomplishment is not having brought another person into this world. And I've come to a realization, or I've kind of figured out, like, what I've really actually feel about this particular thing. And it's basically this. It's like, everybody is shaped by their upbringing, their circumstance, the time that they live in, the culture and all that. It's like fish in water. You can't really see the water you're swimming in because it's all and it's just, you're not aware of it because it's so I don't need to elaborate on that. And so, like, my take on, like, why would you want to bring a kid into this world? Why would you want to put them in a position where they're going to face, which seems just unavoidably in a horrible future, a painful, disturbing, violent, deprived, wretched future compared to what I've known. But that's the that's the important part. That's the part to emphasize, like, compared to what I've known. Because the fact is, like, I grew up in this time where it was a very specific time in history. America, between the 60s and now, raised by pre-boomer parents in a boomer-dominated world. Big oil profit, this insane period of just consumerist, capitalist propaganda, American, this blast, like just a completely unique and ridiculous time, like no other time on earth, in terms of, like, what people expect as, lifespans and quality of life and what life is. Life should be fun. You should retire when you're, 65 and travel the world and everybody should just fly around, and if you can dream it, you can do it, and blah blah blah, and fun and entertainment and blah blah blah. Totally unlike almost any other time in human history. For the vast majority of human beings living on Earth within the history of this planet, life has been something completely different than that. I mean, you think of some peasant living in the countryside of what is today France or whatever, or just anybody. I mean, billions of people. Never thought about like, oh, life should be fun. You should enjoy yourself. It should be entertaining. You should have tons of free time. You should have, medical care, retirement. It's like, no, these are just, for the vast majority of human beings that have existed, life has been very short, very painful, brutal, very no idea about what's going on in the world beyond your immediate surroundings. Maybe much more rich in meaning than we have in this ridiculous consumerist scam culture, propagandized scam culture we live in, Maybe a lot better, but just very, very different. That's the point I'm getting at. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make about having coming to peace with this idea that people are reproducing still, like intelligent people, caring people are still having children, is this idea that like, yeah, a kid born today is going to have a very different life than a kid born when I was born. Very different opportunities, very different values, very different expectations. And to a person, it's very, very, just very different. Better or worse is not for me to judge. For me to sit here from my vantage point going, what would be the point? You're just going to give these kids are just going to be, fodder for the cannibalistic rape gangs that will rule the wasteland, or they'll just, at best become leaders of the cannibalistic rape gangs that will rule the wasteland, I go, no, like, that kind of vision, that super negative thing is ridiculous, because the fact is, like, you don't, above all else, I just don't know what the future looks like. I don't know what future people will think like, and I don't know, I'm not in a position to judge, like, what a valuable or good life is, I definitely don't believe that like a longer life is a better life, like, oh, I lived to be 93, so therefore I won. I had a better life than somebody who died at 19. It's like, no, it's just different. And if lifespans, 25 years from now are, 30, sorry, I keep saying that. If life is short, brutish, and filled with pain, that doesn't make a bad life, necessarily. It could be a good life, not one that I would want to live. But I'm not the one living it, so who cares? So have kids, that's my point. If you're a good person, have kids, we need you.